Greetings my lovelies, and thank you for stopping by today. Today is a book review day because I have not done one of those in a hot minute, which is kind of sad given that we're in September and we're almost done with the year. And yes, I have been still reading and equating books to the best of the month to do the bracket at the end of the year. However, I have not reviewed much of the books I've read because as a whole, this year's kind of been a struggle bus for me reading wise. However, I think I might have finally gotten out of my slump with this one. So without further ado, let's go ahead and discuss God of Lost Words by A.J. Hackwith. So if you've been around this channel for a while, A.J. Hackwith should sound familiar because I have reviewed two of her other books. The God of Lost Worlds is the third book in the Hell's Library trilogy, and it has been easily my favorite trilogy of recent years. I think the last trilogy I loved this much was House of the Rising Sun, Crescent City one by Kristen Painter. It's got Faye and it's amazing, and if you would like me to talk about that whole series, trilogy, let me know by commenting down below. But anyway, that's not the point of this video. However, before I begin, if you have not read Library of the Unwritten or Archive of the Forgotten, and you don't want to be spoiled, stop. Go read all three because I'm telling you they are worth it. They are wonderful, they are so good. And then come back to this video. If you don't care about that, then we're gonna go ahead and roll with it. So, based off of book 2, you're still carrying right off where we left with our main characters, and they have learned that books carry fragments of souls, whether it's the soul of the author or the potential for a greater soul. It doesn't really matter. They just hold this power that if Hell were ever able to get its hands on, it would completely tip the scales of the balance of power. They would consume these and just destroy the entire world. Now Claire and her team just want to protect the books because they realize that they are essentially now their own people, and so they now feel a duty to protect these souls. And this entire book is them trying to find 4 things that they need to separate the Library they had written from Hell and to protect all of the other wings of the library, which I believe they said there were 12 or 13 in total. We were able to see some of these wings before. We've gone to Elysium and Valhalla and a couple other places that I can't quite remember because these are all variations of things that have not been done. So in Elysium, which is older in Greek, it's things that weren't said. Valhalla is obviously deaths, and there are things that were never whispered, there were poems that were never done, and they kind of go on that similar theme to the Dust Wing, which is the largest of all of them. There's no librarian, and it's where all stories go to die. It is also where we almost lost Hero, although he is now a book outside of his book forever, and he has been given the new title of Reader. Claire is now left untethered because the archive has been destroyed, and Ramiel is there helping the library. Brevity is helping, doing her thing as a librarian, struggling but getting better, and so on and so forth. But anyways, rambling on. The 4 things that they need to find is a realm that will house them, or a realm that is unoccupied. They need a guide to guide souls to them, so to collect the stories to them. They need a gate, which is self-explanatory, and they need a god. Someone to preside as the power, essentially, for that realm to keep it protected. There are some revelations in this story about the status of gods that I was just like, oh shit. I don't want to spoil that part, but yeah, I was like, yeah, it also makes sense. That's the whole premise of the story. They start off by gathering the other wings of the library together to sort of force them to happen because the other library wings are happy in the realms, but Claire's like, look, if one wing goes down, we all go down, and who's not to say that if Hell were to take over us, that the other realms wouldn't see the same thing and try to do it to you. Oh, so good. I wasn't quite sure which one of our characters were going to end up as what feature, and I did not know where their realm was going to come from at all. And so I knew that some of them were going to be assigned the particular roles that they were looking for. However, I think Walter, who is death basically, serves as their gate. Although I think it could be another character, I'm not 100% sure. But I think Hero's the one that finds the realm, but I thought Hero was the gate. I don't know. Little iffy on that point, but either way, I don't care. I cried a little at the end. I teared up. Probably not cried as heavily as I would have had I not been medicated, but my medication sometimes makes it a little challenging for me to fully cry, but I did feel all the big emotions. It's just, it was so good. I think I finished it in like 3 days, which is pretty standard for the other two in the series. I think I was in love with Library I've Written by the first 5 chapters. And that's kind of rare for me to love a book that quickly. And I knew by the end of the Archive of the Forgotten, I was going to eventually go back to this series and read it as a case study of just masterful storytelling, wonderful world building, and just complex and interesting characters. Like, it's that good. So, ratings. I have not done ratings for books in a long time. I also do not typically talk about books that I did not finish because I don't believe that is fair to the authors, because just because I don't like it doesn't mean that it's not going to be good for somebody else. It's highly subjective. However, in the context of giving my overall thoughts, I've decided to adapt the Cawpile method, CAWPILE. And if you've been around anything on Bookstagram or whatever, you've probably been somewhat familiar with it. So I'm going to introduce that method for myself here with you guys, just briefly talking about it to give my overall rating. But just know that regardless of what the score is, I love this series. Anyways, let us begin. For characters, I gave that an 8 out of 10. I love the characters. They're all very rich and complex and diverse. They feed off of each other very well. The atmosphere and setting, I mean, I can't just describe this enough. Like, the traveling through the different afterlives was so cool because it was just, they all exist and people get directed to whichever one that they need to. Some are more popular, some are actually forgotten and crumbling as our gods are trying to hold on to everything. Writing style? I love her writing style. It just pulls you in, sucks you in, and it just keeps you there. And the chapters are split up by the characters, and they all do have their own distinctive voices, which can be quite challenging to do. So it's not like, okay, this is just this character's point of view. This is actually this character speaking for the story. So good. P is obviously plot. I give that a 9 out of 10. I absolutely love it. Only reason why I didn't give it a 10 out of 10 is because the start of this book particularly was a little bit of a slog. But after that, like, once it really started going, it was really good. But that's the only reason why I didn't give it like a full 10 out of 10, because I was like, oh, this is not flowing as easily as the others. But other than that, top notch. Love it all the same. It is the intrigue, and I gave that a 9 out of 10, only primarily because I felt like the wrap-up of Hell just felt a little cast-off-ish without fully resolving. So I know Hell's not main area of what the story is about. However, I would have liked that storyline to be a bit more resolved. But it's okay because they're free, so that's all that matters. Next is Logic, which is also relationships. That one I gave 8 out of 10, primarily because some of the relationship changes seem to kind of come out of nowhere. I'm not complaining. They're all relatively good. I love the friendship between Claire and Brevity and how that kind of changed and how Claire became softer in the end without losing any of her like cut-throatiness. But just some of the relationships I didn't see developing in the way that they did. Maybe I just missed the cues that were there, so... But either way, I wasn't unhappy with how some things played out. and the ending with Claire and Hero and their whole conversation and the coming up of their relationship and how it just reached its whole full circle was just, oh, that's what got me. That's the one that got me. Oh, tears. And last but not least, we have overall enjoyment, which is a definite 10 out of 10. Like, oh, it was so good. Like I said, I gobbled this book up in like a couple of days and just so good. Like, I have a list of quotes that I need to go back and find because they are just that good. And of course, all of it is pertaining to writers and stories and things like that. All things which are very near and dear to my heart as an indie author myself, but still, so good. So overall, when you add all those things up and you divide it by 7, excuse me, you get a score of 8.9. And on my rating scale that I built for it, that's still 5 stars. And it has secured this month's spot for Book of the Month. So God of Lost Worlds is September's pick for Best Book of the Month and will be in the Best Book of the Year bracket at the end of December, which you can track all that on my Instagram because that's an entirely Instagrammy thing. I share that occasionally on my TikTok, but I am not doing a whole video on that one because I don't always vote on the books. Sometimes I can't choose, so I put that up to my followers. And so if you would like to participate in that, go ahead and be sure to follow me on all of my socials, especially my Instagram and my newsletter, because my newsletter people will tend to get things ahead of everybody else. So if you want to go ahead and pick for your favorites once I announce what the brackets are, newsletter's probably the best way to go. If not, be sure to follow my Instagram. And since we are in September, we only have 3 months left of the year 2024. Can you believe it? And I have been negligent in my revealing of my books of the month, so I'm just going to run through those. In January, we started off kind of twisted with Haunting Adeline. I read that book primarily because I kept seeing it all over my TikTok and all of the thirst traps of Zaid. I read it in 2 days. I have, well, let's just say that book is not for the weak-hearted. And while it is a very compelling story, it can also be a very triggering story. There are some parts, especially in the second book, where I had to like put it down for a second because they were quite physically painful to read. So read at your own risk, but that was a hell of a way to start a year. I was like, holy snaps. And when I judge books based off of like best book of the month, it's just largely how quickly they grab me and do not let me go until the end. So if it leaves an emotional impact on me, I was most likely gonna make that spot. Don't judge me. Book number 2 in February is A Deadly Education. I got this book primarily because of the opening line, which is, I have to go find it now. I decided that Orion Lake needed to die after the second time he saved my life. Yeah, done. Picked it up. The world building in it was a little tricky. I still didn't understand everything that was going on, but I'm like, it's such of a what the fuck is going on that I went ahead and bought the other 2 books in the trilogy because I need to know. March was Consorting with Spirits, which is a non-fiction spiritual book. I have developed a keen interest in historical witchcraft and grimoires and those type of things, and just the cover of it really caught my eye and the premise of communicating with spirits, and I really did like the way that the author wrote things. It was very no nonsense, very unflouncy. He's like, a lot of it would just be like, you know, common sense type of scenarios, and I was like, bet. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed reading this book. April is A Soul to Steal. I love this series. I got the first one primarily because the first monster reminded me of Elias from Ancient Magus Bride, and just, yeah, can't, if you know, you know, and I am not going any further into that, but basically, it's given the cover, you can dictate it's like it's a romance, and I will stop everything that I am doing when the author releases a new one. May was when I started to slow down and slog, and I only read one book that month, and that was Fourth Wing, again largely because of TikTok. And because it was the only book that I read, I was like, well, it automatically wins that point. I was not impressed with Fourth Wing, but I felt like I've been reading so much of the like young A fantasy stuff that they all kind of blended together. The dragons were interesting. To put it kindly, I think a lot of these like larger fantasy books are falling into the realm of being so big with nothing happening. Like, I was like 90% of this book could probably have been chunked out and the story would have been a little bit better. I read the second one only because like my neighbor absolutely like loves the series and was like, I want someone to talk about with it, and I was like, okay. And then I did not finish that book, and I was like, you can just tell me what happens in the third because I no longer care. If I have multiple books though in these last 3 months, I might bump out Fourth Wing for another book that I think would deserve that spot better, but for now it's a placeholder. Everyone's allowed to have their opinions on books, and since this is a very popular one, it's a little nerve-wracking sometimes to say that you don't like a very popular book because people don't know how to let other people have opinions that differ. But anyways, I digress. On to the next one. June is another nonfiction, and it's proactive role-playing, and it's for Dungeons and Dragons. In May, I started a homebrew D&D campaign with the people that I used to work with. And so I was trying to find ways to be a better DM, and a lot of them have never played Dungeons and Dragons before. A few of us have played like a couple of games. I've played a couple of games. This is my first time DMing, so like it was just kind of like very helpful to like help some of them flesh out some of their characters. A lot of them were struggling with their character motivations, and they really wanted to get into like the role-playing aspect of it. So for that alone, like that took the top part for June. July is the Soul to Protect. It's a snake. Snakes. This was the first one that didn't directly tie into the subsequent whole story of everything that was going on. But I do have a feeling that it's going to play a bigger role. The characters are going to come play a major role because a lot of things have changed. It's the one thing I really do like about this series. The spice and the relationships, delicious. But even the storyline and that is so good. Every book provides something new that continues the story forward while allowing us to live with these characters. Anyways, like I said, I will drop everything and read. And she put out 2 books in a year. Holy God. August is A Cruel Prince. That came up in my library during what I was trying to do for my indie reads. And I unfortunately have a rule that if a library book comes available, no matter what I'm doing, I have to set all those other books aside for the library because I've waited a long time for these, and other people are also waiting, so I don't like to leave them waiting. I've already passed up on The Cruel Prince once, and I don't know why this book particularly was like tickling in my brain like an earworm, because I've read it before and I did not like it, so I didn't bother with the rest of the series. And then it just started kind of like curling in. I think it's when I did my enemies to lovers video, because I talk about Jude and Carden a lot because they are lovers to romance, or enemies to lovers, I mean. But when I reread it, I enjoyed it far more this time around. So I'm going to read the rest of the series now because I am actually interested in what happens. I think it was a victim of I had read so many that were so similar that I could not enjoy it. Oh well. And of course we know that the God of Lost Words makes September. So for the rest of September, I am working through my dark academia theme. Yes, I have a dark academia theme for September. In October, we're going to do just magic-y. I'm going to lean towards just any of the magic books that I have, which is a fair chunk of them. I don't know what I'm going to do for November. I might do cozy fantasies for November, and December I have no idea. I haven't decided yet. There used to be an indie readathon in December with Cloud Kitten Chronicles called In December, but I haven't seen any information on that in several years. And I just can't bring myself to start up another project. But if you guys have any ideas on what flavoring I should read for December or any other month, go ahead and comment down below so I can figure it out. I might just read indies again, who knows, because I didn't get through nearly enough of my indie books that I have, and I kept finding more. I have a bad habit of finding books without reading them. I will eventually. Mostly. Anyway, that is all that I have for you guys today. I know this video was a bit of a two-parter. It was a book review and then a brief summary of best books of the month, which I thought was appropriate since this book took September's spot. If you have any books that you would like for me to read and review, please comment them down below. I'm always looking for new things to read. My genres typically are fantasy and historical fictions, although I am not adverse to nonfiction or science fiction. Even crime fiction. It's whatever. I will give everything at least a try once. And sometimes I am pleasantly surprised. So I hope you all enjoy the rest of your week. Please be sure to follow me on all of my social media so you can see what I'm doing, what's going on, and if you want to know of things ahead of time, please be sure to head over to my website and sign up for my newsletter. I will see you all next time. Bye.